Ohio State and Washington both with 15 Rose Bowl appearances, but this is the first time the Buckeyes and the Huskies have gotten together. Got Steve Hellwagon on the line from Bucknuts, talking Ohio State football. Steve, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great.
Yeah, so this is the granddaddy of them all, even in the playoff era. I was disheartened to hear a number of Ohio State fans on social media after the college football playoff selections were announced to hear that they weren't too thrilled about the Rose Bowl. How you can't be thrilled about the Rose Bowl. I understand the disappointment because you want to win the ultimate ring. And I just think this is an unfortunate byproduct of what the system now is.
Yeah, no question about it, Mark. We had this last year. Ohio State played the Pac-12 champion last year in the Cotton Bowl, and it was USC. I think had that game been USC in the Rose Bowl, I think maybe people would have been more excited about that, but it was kind of treated as kind of a blasé thing. Ohio State won the game 24-7, but neither team played well. A ton of mistakes on both sides of the ball, and Ohio State won the game 24-7. It was their first win over USC, I want to say, since 1973, something along those lines, or January 1 of 74 perhaps. And they had lost to them, I want to say, 7 times perhaps in the interim since 1974. And this was USC, a team that rubbed Ohio State's nose in it as recently as 2008. There was a game at the Coliseum, and USC won 35-3 with Mark Sanchez as the quarterback, and they had just an amazing team, Cushing and Malaluga, and just so many great players. And nobody really regarded that win as much as anything when Ohio State won that game. And then, of course, you come to this season, and because the playoff is moved out of Pasadena this year, it's somewhere else. It'll be in the Rose Bowl, Ohio State versus Washington, the Pac-12 champion. At least they made the playoff a couple years ago, so they have a little bit of credibility. Their coach, Chris Peterson, number 2 on the active winning percentage coaching list, right behind Urban Meyer. So the 2 winningest active coaches will be on opposite sidelines. And, of course, Jake Browning for Washington, making, I want to say, his 53rd straight and final start for Washington. So there is some cachet there. I guess the trade-off this year is the venue is better perhaps than it was last year, although it was a great setting down in Dallas for that game. You had fans from both teams there. This one will probably be, again, sold out at the Rose Bowl, but not much excitement for this game, to be quite honest with you.
And you've talked to the players since the aftermath of the college football playoff selection and knowing that they're going to the Rose Bowl. And again, the Rose Bowl for guys like Steve and I growing up in the Midwest way back when on those dark and dreary New Year's days, and to see that bright field on the TV screen with the St. Gabriel's in the background and one of the more picturesque settings in college football, the beautiful field, and the 2 teams, the one from the Midwest and the Pac-12 champion, going out there and playing, just kind of lit up the living room again on what was typically a dark and dreary once it hits 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon East Coast time in the Midwest. But so it's just difficult for me to process not getting excited for the Rose Bowl, but that's the playoff for you. So I'm guessing that the players generally gave a good face in regards to this matchup with Washington and getting the opportunity to play in Pasadena. But were there a few glimpses of disappointment?
Yeah, I think some of that has subsided now that it's been 10 days, I guess, since the Big Ten championship game and since the pairings, I guess, for the playoff came out. Ohio State regarded as number 6 in the final poll by the playoff committee, behind even Georgia, which lost 2 games and didn't win a conference championship. So, maybe some of that serves as a chip on Ohio State's shoulder to say, let's go prove to the world that we deserve to be in a playoff. I think they also have the incentive that this is Urban Meyer's last game, and they want to send their coach out on a high note and give him a victory as he rides off and closes this chapter of his coaching career, if not his coaching career in total, with this game. So I think that that's kind of an interesting subplot for this game too. I mean, it is interesting. We get to talk to Urban Meyer the day that the pairings were announced, before he made his announcement that he was going to be stepping aside. And I had to flag down the moderator, the sports information director, Jerry Emig, and he's the one who calls on the people to ask the questions. I said, "Can I ask just one question?" And he's like, "Yeah." I waved to him. I said, "Nobody's asked about Washington." And so he let me ask one question about Washington. Meyer gave about a 20 to 30-second answer. And sure, it was the day that the pairing was announced. But, from Friday night of that weekend, you knew that if you didn't make the playoff and you won the Big Ten championship game, you're going to be playing Washington in the Rose Bowl. And it's still an afterthought. I don't think anybody's really that excited about it. And I'm not meaning to give anybody anywhere bulletin board material. I'm just telling you that Ohio State had much bigger sights for this season. They won the Big Ten championship, went 12-1, and it wasn't good enough. Obviously, the one loss was, as it turned out, kind of a disqualifier for them to lose by 29 points at Purdue, a 6-16 this season. This is all material that we've covered backward and forward, I know, prior to this, but again, you're hard-pressed to find anybody who is really that excited about Washington here on the 12th of December. But my guess is by January the 1st, and they see the setting, as you mentioned, at the Rose Bowl, the best non-playoff bowl game every year. And certainly, the years it's in the playoff, still just an amazing setting out there. I think it's going to be something to look forward to, definitely.
So if motivation is a factor in this one, it certainly could have been the same situation last year. And you laid out the scenario with the Buckeyes winning the Big Ten championship, getting left out of the playoffs as the number 5 team with 2 losses last year, and still turning in, even though it was a sloppy game, as you mentioned, ugly offensive game. Ohio State, the much better team on the field. The pass rush was dominant in winning 24-7. So whatever Urban Meyer magic exists throughout his coaching career, and not just the stop in Columbus, but elsewhere, that gets his teams ready for rivalry games and postseason games, despite questions about motivation last year. You would have to think for a final game for him would be in play for the Buckeyes to kind of hurdle that disappointment.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Just 2 postseason losses when you take in just the bowl games for Meyer at Ohio State. Both of those were to Clemson, one in the Orange Bowl and one in the Fiesta Bowl, I believe, for the national semifinals 2 years ago. So otherwise, it's been a clean sweep for Ohio State with Urban Meyer as the coach in these bowl games. And his record, when he has more than a week to prepare for a game, is something amazing. As you mentioned, his record in rivalry games was amazing. And I guess we'll put it all to the test one more time this upcoming game, January the 1st, against Washington in the Rose Bowl. We'll see if he's able to summon that one more time and put the Buckeyes in position to come away. It would be a second consecutive bowl win, as we mentioned, after USC last year. The record, I think, would be then 4-2 or 5-2 in bowl games under Urban Meyer. You count the one season as 2 with Alabama and Oregon postseason games. So, yeah, it's a very interesting discussion, to say the least.
We've got Steve Hellwagon on the line from 247 Sports. The Ohio State platform there is Bucknuts. Steve, we see the announcement today from Draymond Jones that he will not return for his senior season, and he's moving on to the NFL draft.
Yeah, this was something I think that a lot of people knew about and had been discussed, if not publicly, at least privately, for quite some time. When the announcement was made, it would be the Rose Bowl. They had Draymond Jones come in and speak to the media, and they asked him if he planned on playing in the game. And as of that date, he said he wasn't sure. Today, he said, yes, I'm sure I'm playing in the game, but I'm also sure that it'll be my last game at Ohio State. He'll be moving on, entering the NFL draft. I think some people believe he could be a late first round pick. He's been there 4 years now. Should have his degree wrapped up, if not the end of this semester, pretty quickly. So a lot of positive things for him. He had really a good year. The only first team All Big Ten player on Ohio State's defense this year was Draymond Jones. Played kind of an undersized, athletic defensive tackle, 280 pounds, will probably be a defensive end, outside linebacker, depending on the scheme that he gets into at the NFL level, perhaps more as an edge rusher. And when he was on this year, he could dominate games, that's for sure. And he had, I think, obviously it hurt Ohio State to lose Nick Bosa. Teams that were double teaming Nick Bosa early in the season then moved and were double teaming either Draymond Jones or Chase Young as the season wore on. And so he had a little bit more attention, a little bit more interference between him and the opposing quarterback, but he still made a ton of great plays throughout the course of the year and did more than his share, obviously, to help the Buckeyes pull off the Big Ten championship and a 12-1 regular season.